Aye.
Short Bus Debate Club. It's a bus rolling.
I can get on board. Hello, I'm Darren Jolly.
It's time to get this short bus started. So let's roll and on with the show. This is Brian Courtney with Short Bus Debate Club. As always, Darren Jolly is here with me.
Hi.
And today we are continuing the road trip with third-party organizations, alternative parties, if you want to call it that, but somebody other than Democrats and Republicans. So we have the Reform Party with us tonight, and we have Rick Casa, who is the North Carolina Party chairman, and then the chairman for the platform, or chairman for, I don't understand what you wrote. Anyway, he's got two titles. Will you clear up that second one that I just blundered?
I'm chairman for the platform committee.
Okay, I did get that about right. Okay. And then we also have Sam Gibbons with us, and Sam is the communications committee chairman for the National Party.
Yes.
I got that one right?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Darren, for having us.
Yes, sir. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, we know it's late where you guys are, so we appreciate it.
Yep.
So we sent out the same 7 questions to all of the parties, trying to make things as fair as possible. We're going to ask you the standardized questions, and then we'll probably ask you 2 or 3 that are specific to the Reform Party. But do you have any questions before we kick it off, or should we jump to the first question?
Welcome to jump to that first question.
Okay.
So when I was doing my homework today, the Reform Party, in relation to other parties that have existed out sort of like the 2-party duopoly, or whatever you'd call it in the U.S. for so long now, the Reform Party's interesting because, like, 96, I see Perot, 2000, I see Buchanan, and in 2004, you endorsed Nader. I mean, you couldn't have a broader variety between those 3 individuals. So in that context, what is the main idea behind your party's platform as it sort of evolved to today?
Rick, I'll let you on that one.
All right. Well, this is, it started out with Ross Perot, yes, with the need for a more fiscally responsible approach to governance, with some sort of addressing of the inherent corruption that has come across in the duopoly system, because that's another topic we can go into, but it's Duverger's law. When you have the type of electoral system that we have, it tends to foster a 2-party system that ends up through time polarizing and becoming more corrupt.
So, we obviously, the party started as the party of Perot. And it was, in the conversations that I've had, was kind of cobbled together in order to support Perot, right? Because whenever you have something that takes off like that, like essentially going viral before things went viral, you're struggling to keep up. And so the structure that was made kind of fell into the hands of people that manipulated it, right? Like Pat Buchanan. And then obviously, I'm not going to call Nader manipulation, but I only know so much about that, right? Because when Ross Perot ran for president the first time, I was 2, So the party that I interact with is different than, those kind of prior elections. And so what you'll see is with our platform that we've been working on, that we're going to unveil, not this Saturday coming, but next Saturday, this revamped platform, we're still that party of Perot, right? Like we still want to hold true to those ideas that Perot had put forward, that a number of people see as somewhat kind of prophetic, right? Like, you know, how did NAFTA really turn out for us? How did the budget really turn out for us? Even though people called him crazy at the time, you know, so those things are going to be fiscal responsibility, government ethics and transparency, right? And then an overall national security, national stability and prosperity for working Americans. And so that's going to be kind of those guiding principles behind our platform.
I will add to that. Pat Buchanan was pretty much an outlier as far as representing the Reform Party. He did not. There was a different Reform Party. It wasn't our Reform Party. It's an odd story, but he hijacked the party, basically replaced reformers with his own people, and ran a convention that was pretty much illegal. But we're not going to get into the specifics there.
So that's
taken over a decade to correct that with the FEC and to tell them that that wasn't us.
Yeah, that's worth warning to the other third parties, though, right? So as we see a resurgence and increase in third parties, they have to be careful. Otherwise, you know, there's the chance of being taken over by very extremist views. And maybe we're already seeing that with some groups.
Yes.
Well, you know, the Libertarian Party has complained about that in the past. They said that the GOP, you know, basically infiltrated them and splintered the group. I know when we were speaking to the Green Party guys, they talked about how not that the party itself was infiltrated, but they introduced these third parties in like New York and New Jersey that weren't true third parties. They were still just Democrats, but they had that independent sticker on it. So it was like independent Democrats for New York or something along those lines. So
Yeah.
I kind of see where you guys are going. But even if you compare Ross Perot to Ralph Nader, I mean, they're substantially different people.
Yeah,
They both don't. I mean, they're both against. I mean, they're spent a lot of time dealing with corruption issues. I mean, there's definitely a straight line in those spaces.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
would you say that's the most important thing for the Reform Party is the anti-corruption within our government?
See, that one's hard, right? Because at this point, the issue is so multifaceted. Obviously, like, yeah, that is a chief thing is corruption. But just railing against corruption doesn't fix the corruption.
Right.
Um,
That is not the only niche that we're driving at here.
yeah. So returning government back to the people, I think is the goal of the Reform Party.
Okay, that's fair. So since I asked, so since I asked the, you know, what's important to you thing, I guess we can just move on to question 2. And I understand that there are checks and balances and whatever, but if you had the power, and you can answer this from a party perspective, or, you know, maybe you guys individually, I don't know how you want to do it, but if you guys were elected, and however you want to think about it, you know, everybody that was elected was a member of the Reform Party, or there was one person who had a magic wand and he could make all of these changes. If you could change Social Security, the environment, education, healthcare, foreign policy, and the U.S. economy, how would you guys do it? And maybe give us an idea how you would resolve those issues.
Rick, what you think? You want to give the party view, or you want to give separate views?
Ooh,
Because
yeah.
I think there's going to be, it could almost be this can either be what we think the party's going to want, right? Or it could be a matter of as two people that work together so much, you know, where we align and then where there might be some difference, because there is nuance within the party. Not everybody thinks the same. So
Right.
I don't know, man. I'm good either way.
Well, we can start off with the first one that we talked about, Social Security. Was it Social Security?
Yes.
No, number one, I think for us was
We're talking, yeah. Okay. You go ahead with that then, Sam.
yeah. So obviously for the party's point of view, U.S. economy is going to be number one. How can you be a party for the people if the people are experiencing inflation, stagnant wages? We have multiple strikes that are ongoing. There's a threat of a government shutdown, and how, you know, all these federal workers are about to be furloughed. Money makes the world go round, and the U.S. economy is chief among that.
These are things that are very personable to all voters. This affects everybody.
Yeah,
So,
and if the economy's not right, nothing else is.
Going back to 1992 with James Carville talking about what's the most important aspect to people right now. It's the economy, stupid. It's an infamous saying. It will never change. It's going to be the economy.
Yeah. I mean, in my generation, right? Like I was born in the 90s, you know, I graduated right in the middle of the Great Recession. And I was fortunate enough to be able to join the military and not have to worry about that and be able to attend college, you know, but, you know, suddenly what 30 years old, right as the pandemic hit, you know, so like as soon as you get on your feet, boom, another massive wave comes through. So the economy, you got to fix that.
Can I ask you just a little question about that? You brought up the strikes. What would the Reform Party think about like the United Auto Workers and what's going on over there?
We've had some internal discussions on that, and it's hard to say because misinformation and sensationalism gets in the way of so much. And so the ability for an individual to, you know, petition and try and get a better wage is important. Because companies are making, you know, if you're making record profits, where is that money going to? If you're not investing in your employees, you know, what is the long-term viability of that?
There are legitimate concerns to what the UAW workers are facing. And one of them, you know, I'm not an expert on the subject, but there's a two-tier pay structure there. And it all, it's either you were hired in before 2007 when the companies got bailed out, or you were hired in after. Less pay, hardly any pensions, less benefits package, and you know, the UAW wants that ended.
Yep.
So there's obviously some things to talk about.
But at the same time, right, like some of the stuff that these people are going to be advocating for, right, perseverance of their, or, you know, keeping their jobs that are about to be replaced by technology, you know. So I'm a school teacher, and we teach, you know, I teach human geography, I teach change. And so all the dock workers fought to keep their jobs whenever we switched over to the shipping container. But how revolutionary was the shipping container to modern, you know, transportation?
Right.
And so it's hard to balance the need for people to have a job, but also how much are you impeding, or, you know, impeding upon better paying jobs and future progress. And I don't want to get in the way. I don't want to get in the middle of that balance and that argument. People need to be paid what they're worth, but at some point in time, jobs have to be let go that are outdated for efficiency of the economy as a whole.
So does that make, I mean, since you're a school teacher and since, you know, education and retraining is part of, you know, letting some of those jobs go, does that make education number two, or does that fall even farther down the line?
Oh no, it's
So for me, education would probably be number two, but for the party as a whole,
it's hard to even list these by number because
It
there are
really is. There's that so many of these things have to be dealt with because they've not been dealt with, that it is difficult to align them. Age demographics of the United States says that Social Security and healthcare are of vital importance. If your workers are sick, well, first off, if you're seniors, if the people that have fed the economy for so long do not have adequate means for survival, that's a whole problem. Social Security has to be dealt with. Healthcare, if your people are sick or if you have short life expectancy, then you're losing out on your workers' ability to work and have a productive and meaningful life. But then education is going to be what empowers people to afford certain things. And that retraining is also important. So like this is the impossible task of picking priorities.
I know it's a difficult question. I mean, I don't even know which order I would put them in.
So like Social Security, it like there's been all this talk, particularly in Republican circles, to like to change the retirement ages, to move the ages up. I mean, is there any policy position that the Reform Party would be coming from, like in those spaces, or like leave it alone? We just need to find other places to feed them financially.
Yeah, we don't have major plans to make changes to the application of Social Security programs, except to make them to protect them better.
Yeah,
a lot of pockets. It really, if you look back at some of the information from the actual data, is showing that Social Security funds has shown increases in many years. This is not, it's not as insolvent as what some people want to claim it to be. The problem is that it's connected in appropriations and budgeting in the federal government to where it gets money pulled from it constantly for other things. And it needs to be separated and protected because by itself and operated correctly, it can remain solvent and for a very long time.
Yeah. And I'm a little bit more pessimistic on it. It's one of those things that I've kind of, I don't want to say ignored, but I don't expect to get it. I know that I'm paying it, but I in no way, shape, or form expect to get it. And so I have to pursue that retirement elsewhere. Is that something that I would like us to look at in the future? Absolutely. But being a volunteer organization, that's one of those things that we'll have to find time to really sit down and hash out.
Well, and I guess technically we could say Social Security is part of the U.S. economy. I mean, but I know that, and probably none of our listeners are of the age where they're drawing Social Security. But I know that, basically all 50 states now, I mean, baby boomers are starting to draw Social Security and they vote. And so
Yep.
That's an important question. So that's why we threw it in there.
Yes.
Well,
I kind of would have liked to mix some other stuff in.
I personally on Social Security because I'm disabled. So I have some experience with the system and an understanding of how important it is as far as survival.
Yeah.
When unexpected things happen.
Yeah.
You mentioned when you were talking about the party platform, national security. So as far as foreign policy, I mean, since we're in the middle of feeding Ukraine weapons, I mean, how would the Reform Party think about that then?
So we just defined foreign policy in our new platform, or no, not foreign policy. We defined national security. And we really dug into Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution and the jobs of Congress. So you'll find our ideas behind national security to be a little bit more encompassing. But with foreign policy, I mean, that was my focus. As far as at college, right now, international politics, military affairs. And so sometimes my views are going to differ from the party a little bit. Because I personally think that, you know, all those old weapon systems that have been sitting around waiting for the war that never happened are living their best life right now. And that, you know, well, I don't know, Rick, what do we want to get into that? Like sovereignty, the importance of state sovereignty?
Yeah, because really, if you're asking whether we would support Ukraine or not support a war to protect their sovereignty, the majority of membership in the Reform Party is in favor of supporting Ukraine and protecting their sovereignty for a number of reasons. And it just goes back to, you know, we're a party who wants to empower down to the more local levels. You know, within our country, you know, we would like to. Oh, this is complicated. We want local governments to be strong and not interfered with unless they have to be, you know, from guidance from above. So with that said, we're talking about a sovereign nation of Ukraine, voted for their own independence in 1991, had never had independence before that, were parts of empires and other cultures for thousands of years, and they finally get a chance to have their own nation, and this is what happens. So, you know, yeah, I won't get into it, but I was a Russian specialist as far as my political science studies that began in the late 80s. But everything, of course, took a turn in 1980 or 1989 when there wasn't a Soviet Union anymore. So,
your political science degree suddenly becomes a history degree, right?
It changed for me at that point. Yes.
But kind of going back to those ideas, right, and then kind of transferring that out. The United States is an absolute. I mean, we're the world hegemon, realistically. You know, we don't want to be the police of the world, but we are the most powerful military, economic power in the world. And people hate us for that, but there's stability that kind of comes in that. And so the way that we kind of wrote this upcoming policy that you know will be voted on is this idea of, again, transferring the local to the global, right? So if locally we want to be good citizens of our state, of our community, of our country, right, then we want to continue that participation up. And so the United States needs to be a good member of the international community. And that is encouraging peace talks, that is encouraging or that is assisting in times of natural disaster, because the world is interconnected. And I don't want to get into this like ultra globalist view.
No.
But a world that is prospering is going to be a United States that is prospering. You know, why, like you could go into why are all these immigrants pouring across the borders? Well, that's what we're teaching right now in migration is, well, first off, people migrate for economic reasons, right? They go for large urban areas. And they tend to be young and they tend to be males, right? And those are like what Ravenstein's laws of migration. And that's exactly what we're seeing. It's not an invasion. It's people wanting a better life. They don't want to come here for the better life, but if there's not choices elsewhere, then this is going to be the option that they take. That's individual choice. And so if you properly support that, then you don't have the issues that you're facing.
Right.
I agree with that statement. I'm not sure about that's why everybody hates us statement. I would say that the reason everybody hates us is because we intervene when it's good for us.
That's kind of what I was alluding to, is we have not always been a
There have been mistakes, and we all know this.
Yeah. We have the ability to leverage our power, and that's what kind of gets the lack of good feelings. No, I'll agree with you on that. I should have clarified.
Personally, I look at it more of a stewardship instead of a colonialism. And then the problem is, in the past, we've gotten involved in nation building of two areas that, wars have gone on too long, and doing things that we shouldn't have been doing to start with.
Yep.
So, people are probably worried about that with the Ukraine situation. What's going to happen, after? What if Ukraine does become successful in defending their sovereignty? Then what? Are we going to be, caught with the bill again? We just, we're about the sovereignty of nations, and what doesn't look right is a one nation assuming that the area of another nation has belonged to them for thousands of years, and so therefore they're going to invade it.
Yeah, that's going to get real costly. Like if you think this is expensive, wait for the cost of the alternative, right? Like if your idea of resource or gaining economic power is going to come through military force, the costs are going to be far beyond a dollar figure.
This should have happened in an entirely different way, and yes, it's partially some of the world can take some blame for not really addressing the situation of the Civil War that some circles were trying to get attention to. It should have been addressed.
The 2014 invasion. Well, that wasn't really the Civil War, but anyway.
Well, after the ceasefire, there was never a ceasefire. There was fighting on that front line every day, from the ceasefire on to the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. But the situation with Eastern Ukraine should have been dealt with long ago.
That's what happens when you ignore problems.
Yes.
So just real quick, I would love to just go back and forth about this stuff, but I want to make sure and be, fair with your time, because I know it's getting later and later. So if we did it, I know you said that the U.S. economy is important, Social Security is important, education is important, probably number two. Healthcare, you want your citizens to be healthy so they can go to work. And then foreign policy. So do we put the environment dead last with the Reform Party, or with either of you guys?
I really don't want to. I really
Not fair.
It's not fair. It's not.
It's a very important necessity to care for. Obviously, changes need to be made.
And we really put we put environment as a core element of national security.
Yes.
Like what's the point of healthcare if your air is poison? Like if you have breathable air, then you're going to be reducing, asthma and other lung related illness that cost money in the healthcare system. A clean environment is cheaper on healthcare. And so we don't want to put that dead last. But we would probably put that over foreign policy, because overall, I don't fundamentally hate American foreign policy as it is. I don't think our foreign policy is always as much of a dumpster fire as other elements are. But it definitely needs addressing. But with the environment is, these are our reserves in times of crisis. And so we have to maintain the environment, because this is, where our stockpiles of precious metals are going to come from, where our stockpiles of petroleum are going to come from. And so there's reason to protect that and to ensure that land is being properly managed. How much of that should be on the federal side versus how much of that should be on the state side? And so one of those things that we can kind of get into is we're the national committee for the Reform Party. We aren't going to set a whole bunch of state directives. We can have some ideas of like, hey, here's what we think, but that's really up to the state parties to decide on and implement, you know. But things like the U.S. economy, Social Security, foreign policy, those are national level concerns. Healthcare can definitely fit into there, but education tends to be a state issue, right? Like, again, we can say, here's what we would like to see, but that's a state issue. And environment is in some ways a state issue, but in some ways it's also a national security issue.
I mean, 11% of the taxes collected by the IRS go to education. So
Yeah.
it's a federal issue on some level.
Yeah.
I mean, and it should be expensive actually. But we're entering a period of technology, especially using Web3 technology and other resources that have become available to have an education revolution. We should be going about things in a historically different way, but we should see some amazing things coming up as far as that comes, to offer an education that is more of a custom fit for individuals instead of a cookie cutter. Like back in the 50s, when this is all we needed to do was everybody got the same education because they're off they go to a factory to work.
Yeah.
Things are different now. We're going to see some great things as far as education goes.
I like that answer.
Yeah, and I can tell you, like, in being in education for 8 years, which is not actually an exceptionally long time, there's a lot that your average person isn't going to interact with, and there's been a lot of implementation of different things, but the overall structure of education hasn't really changed, right? And so you try to implement things like at the school that I'm at, they can go to a technology center, right? So kids will get on the bus and spend half a day either learning welding or, nursing or video broadcast, right? And so you have career options within education now for the places that kind of can afford that. And so I'm sure ours is supplemented by federal dollars because we're in an inner city area. But there's educational opportunities. The question is whether or not the students are able and willing to pursue those. And so I think that
What grade are your students again, Sam?
I have high schoolers.
Okay.
So I generally deal with ninth graders, 14-year-olds.
That can be a tough row to hoe there.
I'm going to add one thing. If you wanted a one-liner as far as environment goes, emphasizing the sustainable policies to address the human impact on climate change, protect our natural resources while considering the economic impact of these things. It's a balancing act. We need to balance right.
Yep, and that's the thing that you're going to find with the Reform Party a lot. And what did Mike Pence say in the first presidential debate? Compromise is not leadership or something like that.
Yeah. He was talking to Nikki Haley, I remember.
Yeah. That set me off. No. No.
It's not compromise.
It's not leadership. Yeah, he said something to that effect.
Compromise,
collaboration for compromise.
Right, and so it's not compromise. It's collaboration, right? When you surround yourself with people that are capable and competent, it's not compromise. It's collaboration, and it's a way to voice where people are at and the individual stimuluses that y'all have and coming to your conclusions, and then sharing those and then trying to figure out what the best way forward is. That is civil discourse. That is the foundation of society. And to say that compromise is not leadership is it's authoritarian, and that's not going to get us anywhere.
So parties have gotten lazy with their politics.
Yep. So that's what you'll see with us is we want collaboration on issues. And so that generally brings you towards a center, a logical, kind of agreeable view.
I think that a lot of people would agree that Mike Pence's best day was the day that pushed us to not where he didn't side with the other electors, and that's going to be the end of our memory of Mike Pence. But jumping on and if there's anything else that comes to you about those policies, we can definitely we can feel free to tangent out on them. But so in the Reform Party, when candidates are chosen, what is the process like for like president or like Congress or whatever? How do you pick
So we were talking about that. Rick, you can go for it.
No, I was going to let you. You have the notes there from.
Yeah. So we've been in these rules meetings, right, where we have reviewed the 33 pages of rules that define the Reform Party, and in there, the only thing that we as the national side really are going to have a say in is the president. Unless a state party wants our assistance, we are only going to have a national convention to select the president for, or the nominated president for the Reform Party. So everything else is kind of done within the state, local office or possibly Senate. Now, if we hit that point and there's something that comes up, we can definitely go back and review the rules later. But I don't know what role California Reform Party should have in selecting a senator for the South Carolina Reform Party. As long as we're all on the same page, then, it should really kind of be a non-issue. But as far as like having to get approval, we're not currently set up like that.
So then do each of the states, like maybe this is a better question for Rick because he's the chairperson for North Carolina, but does each state have like their own bylaws on how candidates are selected? Do people just submit like an application and say, hey, I want to run with the Reform Party? How does that work at the state level?
Yes, the states do have their own separate bylaws. They're pretty much in line with what's going on with national. But yes, when people approach the Reform Party from, state X, there's a vetting process and, working things out as Sam had discussed. But yeah, each state does that.
Okay, so that kind of leads into the next question, because you mentioned a vetting process. So, one of the questions is, do you have a steering committee, and how strict do the candidates have to, stick to that party line in order to, make you guys happy and get your support and all of the things that come with being under the Reform Party's umbrella?
That's a good question. There's some lateral movement, as long as they're not directly contradicting any of our core basic principles. I think we, the Reform Party allows some movement within, giving them some discretion within certain issues. Sam, we had talked about this earlier. If you can continue on.
Yeah. So depending on the issue, right? So obviously fiscal responsibility, government ethics, certain things like that, they're kind of our major stances on. But because the Reform Party doesn't really wade into social issues, that's not something that we would hold against our candidates. And so that idea kind of comes into the principles behind the Reform Party should be and it's easy for them to be universal. But some of this cultural conflict that has been created in previous years is going to vary state by state. And so if you try and legislate culture, which we're kind of against, unless it's in line with the Constitution,
Identity.
then you're going to run into problems and you're going to make people unelectable. And so if you have people that are willing to champion your main values, then everything else is a matter of discourse and up to the state.
So
Within the realm of reason, okay? We're not,
Within reason, yeah. Like there's some stuff we're not gonna
we're
like.
not talking about some fringy elements here.
No. But
your answer was very similar to most of the other parties. But
Okay.
you said something that really kind of made me want to follow up, and
Sure.
that is, like, according to the Reform Party, what do you guys consider a social issue? Is it drugs? Is it drinking? Is it abortion? Is it gay marriage?
yep. Those are,
Yep.
those are
Variety of opinion.
anything that triggers your feelings and not your pocket, right? I mean, that's kind of a broad statement to have on it, but
It's not like we don't have stances on this. And
Yeah.
most of the time we default back to a constitutional stance.
yeah, and it's the question is, should the government be regulating this?
Mhm.
Does the government have an active interest in regulating this? Because the Reform Party, we want to reform the systems that really matter, and that's God, that's awful to say. It's not a matter of reforming the systems that matter. We want our focus to be on what is going to affect everybody. And we are not going to touch, well, the national side's not going to touch. I hope that the individual candidates do touch on that.
Sure.
You know,
State.
like they have a responsibility to their community and their people to uphold their values. But on the national side, our focus is reforming government institutions for the betterment of society.
So then it doesn't matter to you if, like, what was it? I can't remember. One of the parties was saying that teachers are kidnapping kids and sending them to Washington to get sex changes, and so they're completely against sex changes.
That makes oh my God. But
Well, so my question is, I mean, I'm against kids being kidnapped and sent to Washington.
yeah,
Sure.
I'm against that.
All right. Oh, well, look, when it comes down to it, though, I've got this, this is some of my personal beliefs more than a party belief.
Right.
We have some very, divisive issues that are very important to everyone.
Right.
However, there are things going on in Washington, D.C. and within our governance that without addressing those first, these other issues will never change, and
Yes.
we'll never be satisfied with getting a correction made. So, that's why we kind of lean on some of the stronger principles of being correcting the course of the way, congressional operations are and the way DC operates.
We want to focus on things that bring people together, not things that tear people apart. Right. Like patriotism and national unity occur through, strong institutional systems. These factors that drive us apart are nothing more than a convenience for the adversaries that we have. And I do not understand the hyperfixation of America's current stance on these. We've been at it for 10 years and nothing has really evolved, and government itself has just gotten worse. And I'm ready for that to be done.
So you're
Right? Like we can address that. I want that to be our only issues that we can address, but unfortunately, we're about to not be funded. So
Right.
So
In this context, then the social issues, I mean, if I'm hearing you right, are sort of like a divide and conquer kind of thing. Like it's
Yeah, we care, right? Like we care
Yeah.
because this affects people's lives, right? Like there's some really tragic things that occur out of, if you've been raped and now your state doesn't allow abortions, or if, you married the person that you love, but your state doesn't allow it because, gay marriage isn't allowed, or at one point in time, interracial marriages weren't allowed. Like those are, and I think we can probably dig into the Constitution to defend some of those. However, we'll let people that affect take up that fight, and we're not going to stop people in the Reform Party from taking up that fight. It's just not going to be the focus of the National Party.
cool.
And I think we all need to recognize that there's an enormous potential to rally people from all political perspectives to the cause of reforming certain things. Because people on the left, on the right, throughout the entire spectrum, will all agree that the system is somewhat corrupted.
We personally, I don't think that you have to win elections to inform government. And with the work that y'all been doing with these third parties and the voices that y'all been helping to amplify, things like voting reform are well, I'm going to go ahead and answer one of your questions for you. Things like voting reform are going to be our primary focus. If we can change the toxic nature in which elections take place, then you will see a fundamental shift in the candidates that are elected. And
Can you elaborate concretely a little bit more? Like what? So like, are you talking about like ranked choice? Or are you talking about like?
So yes, we're talking about all those because we want to have discussions around them. I've personally spoken with Veterans for Political Initiative, and they were really awesome guys. And he explained, why they wanted open primaries and then top 5. But within the state that I'm at, here in South Carolina, there's another group that is pursuing it. It's still ranked choice, right, or instant runoff voting, but we're still retaining closed primaries. And so like you're going to have a variance between the states on how they want to implement these voting rules. And I think that's important because each state is kind of its own country and has its own culture, and it should not be dictated what method it's going to use. But any of those, and Rick will talk about what is that, consent voting, right? Like essentially voting people that you want versus voting people that you don't want, or leaving people that you have no opinion of.
It's like a yes, no, abstain is what it's
yeah,
called.
yeah, yes, no, abstain. So I think there's several options out there that are worth exploring, but with the ranked choice side, it's kind of neat in that if I can't convince you that I'm your number one, right, I'm not going to talk trash about your number one, but I'm going to tell you where we share similarities at so I can be your number 2.
Sure.
And so you get rid of some of the mudslinging, because people need to work, they need to focus on how they're similar so that people can positively rank them rather than, trying to tear everybody down.
Right.
And you don't get into that. What was the 2-party thing that you were talking about earlier, Rick? Where there was a reference you made to, I think it's a French name or.
no, he was talking about the Shea rule.
Yeah.
Duverger's law.
Duverger's law. That's right. Okay.
In a first of the post type of system, usually ends up with a 2-party power structure. When you change that, and we're about allowing people to make their own choices on this. We don't want to have a state government that is restricting a town wanting to use ranked choice voting or star voting or some other form of alternative voting methods for their mayoral race. They should have the freedom to do that. So we're not picking anything out to say, yeah, this is the definitive thing we need to do.
But we know that what we have is not what we need.
Because look, you get situations where somebody wins with 35 or 40% approval or something like that. That's their popular vote. Okay, but then you're looking at 60 to 65% of the people did not consent for those people to win.
And that's not even the people that didn't vote. So,
This
you
is
know,
problematic.
yeah. I think that is our number one focus. You change that, you get enough people from all these different third parties and within the Republican and Democrat Party to alter, positively the voting law in that regard. And then I think you start to see real change, because if they are so great with their ideas, what is there to be afraid of?
And it's all about representation. We have lost, the average person has lost their representation to the way the system has evolved. And
Well, I think both Darren and I agree with you, and that's why we're doing these interviews. The one thing that I'm concerned with, and I'm hoping we can figure out a way to make it work, is, I mean, we get maybe 60% of the voting population to the polls on average. Maybe.
yeah.
And a large reason that they don't show up is because there's confusion and all of that. So I want to put something simple in front of these people. So yeah, mudslinging, I'd like it to go away. All of the commercials, all of that stuff, let's make things fair, give you all a debate where, you're all on there, because the FCC, that's ours anyway, as taxpayers.
Sure.
So why should only Democrats and Republicans get to be on there?
Yeah, that's some gatekeeping. Yeah.
So all of that stuff, but I want to make things as simple as possible for the voter, which again is kind of why we're doing this. But the other stuff, like somebody was talking about some transferable voting right thing that was from Ireland, and the ranked choice thing, that makes me nervous, because what are you going to do, put a rubric in front of these people? There's just some stuff that ends up sort of convoluting it more than
Yes.
see.
I can see that.
Right. Isn't as difficult.
You're right about that. We've got to find something, or at least, like you're saying, Sam, have these like little laboratories in all the different states and counties and whatever, where we're all sort of like working it out in real time. So
Yeah,
All right.
you somehow tapped into my brain. I didn't know if I'd said that out loud, to where, states are supposed to be little petri dishes for democracy. And so as we make this shift, this adjustment, it would be good to see variations in different states to find out what kind of works. That's just research. Rick, I'm gonna let you. Oh, here we go. So this came from a conversation about a month ago. And so there's a guy, John Elliott, used a desire like to determine.
I just was going to mention him.
Yeah. So like, it needs to be expressive, easy to understand, encourage sincere voting, equal weight to all voters, require majority approval, address vote split problem, right? The wasting of a vote, and address polarization. And so as these people are drafting and experimenting with these, like, yeah, we recognize that voting is not everybody's favorite activity, and that we, need to make sure that is a simple as simple of a process as possible, while getting the best results. And so what eventually is going to be presented to y'all should be of that variety of simple to understand. And it's going to require a little bit of education of the voting populace. But that's okay, because one of the other benefits is, if I have more than one vote, I'm going to look up more than one candidate.
Mhm.
I'm going to be better versed in the people I'm going to go vote for, because I have more than one option.
So now we're talking about a more educated constituency.
Mhm.
Doing research and going and making more of an educated vote.
and probably the basis of a stronger civil society at the same time, which is
There you go.
definitely not there right now.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's a hope. That's
I'm glad he threw that name out. I was going to throw it out there and say you should probably talk to Mr. Jonathan Elliott. He has a nonpartisan group. It's called Harmony Research Group, and they do all types of political science data collection and testing with these alternative voting methods, and it's a plethora of information.
So since you all are very conscious of problems with corruption and like it's sort of like one of the topics that you're negotiating, how is the party funded?
we are funded
Good question.
through small donations. We do not have a PAC. We do not have special interest groups. We are funded really largely by internal volunteer or by internal contributions. So I'll say that the Reform Party does not have membership dues. Some political parties have membership dues, but in discussing with our executive committee, we fundamentally disagree with a price to participation. And so really my first donation to the party after being in for about 2 years was just the other week whenever I was, helping verify that our new donation links were working. Because the reality is not everybody has money to give. Some people have time to give, but they don't have the money to give. And so to try and limit membership based off of monetary contributions is not what we're about. But in that same line, we really rely on our members to, when able, provide a donation.
Do you guys like charge for tickets to any, I don't know, Reform Party trade shows or conventions or anything like that where some more money comes in?
Not currently.
No,
Okay.
not in the time in the near past. No. I'm not saying the 90s wasn't like that, because it was a totally different story. They had a PAC that Mr. Perot used in 92 to run independently.
Yep.
It was called United We Stand America. And much of that membership then transferred over to become the Reform Party in 1995 for his 1996 run. So it was almost as if he had a party built already within the network of the PAC, and it just kind of transferred over. And I'm sure the funding was a little different at that time, but Mr. Perot funded a lot of that himself.
Yep.
Okay, so this one is a little more complicated. As far as your goals, what are some of your short-term goals, your midterm and long-term goals, and do you guys have any plans on how to achieve them?
Yeah. So
A bunch of plans. You got about 5 hours? No, I'm just, I'm just gonna let Sam take that.
yeah. So what we've been working on, right? These short-term goals. We really wanted to get to convention, and we have convention on the 7th. And whenever we hit convention, we have a new set of laws for our party. We have a new set of platform, right? An updated, modernized, thought-out platform. And so once we have that and we present that at convention, now we're going to start rolling on rebuilding our party's infrastructure, right? So we have been working on fundraising. We have been working on marketing and advertisement and outreach. And after convention, we'll be working on building or improving the website and updating it. So this year is going to be about revamping the party. It's that internal facing, right? So short-term goals are internal facing, and the medium-term goals is going to be turning that outward and saying, okay, here's what we stand for, here's what we're going to do about it, and then start really building up that membership at the local level and start, participating in local elections. And once we can start, getting some wins in the local elections and rebuilding that party recognition. A side hope is that all these prior people that voted for Perot and realized the impact and ability to see what was going to happen, they're going to recognize that. And so once we start winning these local elections, then we're going to move up to the state and federal. And so Rick is chairman of North Carolina's Reform Party. And I am and have the pleasure of needing to organize the South Carolina Reform Party. And so I have a fight coming up of, getting 10,000 signatures here in the state of South Carolina so that we can become a legitimate political party and build that from within. And so right now we're working on that national face, and very soon we're going to start diving down into the local. And maybe in about 3-4 years, we're expecting to be able to operate again on state and federal elections.
Yes. And then we're talking about currently doing things at the national level, just structurally. We're not talking about
Infrastructure.
So it's really to look at it as if it's a pyramid. We're in the process of laying out everything for that foundation and to go from bottom up. Because the mistake that some third parties use, or the mistake that they fall into most of the time, is a top-down approach. And what does an upside down an upside down pyramid do? It falls over because they try to build that at the top, and they're so focused on who are we going to run for president. We're far from that right now. And I'm not going to speak for the party, but we're not going to put much emphasis on a 2024 candidate. It's a dumpster fire of an election to begin with, and we've got some short-term and midterm goals to look more at local stuff. We have 8 or 9 candidates right now who are actually seated in government. So even though we've been quiet, we have won some elections.
Yep.
So how many states are you guys in where you can actually run a candidate on the ballot?
I don't think it's very many right now. I think
right now with a state board of elections legitimacy, there were some folks that we supported, endorsed as independents with the hopes of bringing them in once things get organized. But that's in time. We will tackle that, and it's different from state to state, so it can get complicated and messy. But it's a small number right now.
Do you guys have charters though in more states, and you're still not on the ballot, or is it that same few states?
We have affiliates. That's another thing that we're going over. I really can't. I'm not at liberty to discuss openly right now.
Yeah.
Until it gets voted on at convention. But there are levels to our affiliation, and there's a starter affiliation level and then a full-fledged affiliation. There are some of us, like the North Carolina chapter has survived since the 90s when it was organized by the Perot folks. We still have the the tax ID number and all the paperwork from the 90s. But it's been a process though, as far as most states to survive that long. So that's why it's a rebuilding. We started this. We tore it down in 2019. So we started this rebuilding in 2020, coming up with this different approach. Just because we finally got out of the woods with the FEC. We got our recognition back with them, and no longer are they threatening to confiscate any money to return money that Pat Buchanan didn't record properly. There's like $500,000 that was kind of floating around. That they were like, "Where did this money go?" It's like, that wasn't us. So that whole legal process is done and over with, and we're finally out of the woods.
Yep.
So I hope I did
y'all are kind of catching us on the rebirth side. So we don't have big flashy things to say right now.
That's a good place, though. That's inceptions are where things begin, right? So
People will criticize the Reform Party and think that, oh, you guys haven't made much progress, but they do not understand the animosity that the duopoly system has put since 96 and 92, when the duopoly parties were threatened by this a third party entity. They kind of, I'm not saying they purposely did this, that, and the other, but the system works against smaller parties.
Yep.
That's all I'm saying.
So, just I just gotta, when I was going through the history of it, I mean, people can say whatever they want about the Reform Party, but you caught lightning in a bottle in a way that no other party ever did or has since, to be perfectly honest with you. When I look at what Buchanan did, especially because he went back to being a Republican in 2002,
Yeah.
was he intentionally trying to because presumably if the Reform Party kept functioning through the Perot position, it was going to hurt Republicans for a long time to come because of who they were pulling from. Was it a sabotage? I mean, does it? I don't want to. I know that I'm curious because that's what it really looks like from the outside.
I can't speak to those motives, but
I can do that. It was a sabotage. I'm not saying that as speaking for the party. I'm saying it as the experience that I saw. Because they put people in, Buchanan's people. I'm not even sure if I should divulge some of this, but when our actual Reform Party folks tried to speak up and stop it, they were punched in the kidneys and actually physically assaulted, and we're not even sure. Our parliamentarian at the time, we weren't even sure if they had quorum for their convention that was hosted on CNN. So it was totally, just a trash heap of a deal. But everybody accepted it, that's the Reform Party, and there's Pat Buchanan, when that wasn't even us.
It definitely lets you know when you start to get a little bit of success against the duopoly system, what kind of mechanisms could be put in place to sort of undermine a position.
That's why we've written our rules the way that we have, right? So the people that we have that are survivors of that incident, have now written the rules in a way that will help guard against that.
We've taken 20 years of experience of these loopholes, and we're closing them up to protect ourselves from these types of things from ever happening again.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny because I would be in like a position where I'm saying, okay, well, I really want to grow. I want to grow. I want to grow. I want to grow.
Hard.
But who can I let in?
Yeah.
Well, this guy came and he said he wanted in. I don't trust him. He's gone.
We're having those problems. Yeah. Barricade the gates. They're trying to get in.
So it would just be like my party, just me.
It's your party.
Pros and cons. Hopefully, we can navigate those obstacles pretty well here in the next 5 to 10 years.
Like you said, you learned a lot from those experiences, I imagine. So
Yeah.
So, and I know this is the last question. This is what you've already kind of elaborated on this on some level, but in terms of the current political process to make things better for voters, for candidates, and for parties, what would you change, like, immediately?
That definitely the voting reform would be our number one focus. Whether or not you want to vote for the Reform Party is entirely secondary to the massive amount of disillusionment that is plaguing the country, right? And whenever you talk about low voter turnout, if nobody I want to vote is on the ballot, and I don't even think that my voice matters, I'm not going to take the time off work to go and do that. And you have to address that. And I think that voting reform is the first step in doing that. Nothing, I don't think anything else can really happen. Term limits can't happen. You know, a balanced budget amendment can't happen. You know, effective, you know, nothing happens without voting reform.
Exactly.
Fair enough.
Pretty succinct.
Yeah, I think again, that's pretty similar to what a lot of the other parties have said. You know, they just want a chance to participate.
There you go.
Like you totally universally people say that, and this is all I do lately is listen to stuff online about it because I try to prepare for everything, you know. But like everybody that is in these spaces, these
You're right.
and they're not reserved. I think that like these sentiments are so much more in the open, but obviously because we have the system and the financial positions that are driving those sort of like modus operandi does not support, you know,
Yep.
this voting, anything that would create meaningful change with regards to how we choose who's going to be representing us.
It's there is, you know, wow. There's a documentary that's called Unrepresented, and it's very enlightening. I would recommend that for anybody to watch it. It presents things in a way that you know, it's I don't know what to say about it. It's a little depressing, but it really puts things into perspective.
Yep.
So I've got well, I don't know how quick it is. So one of the things you guys have mentioned is, you know, the Constitution and constitutional governance. What I've noticed from other interviews is that when people mention those words in conjunction, they have a tendency to be more
You can go ahead and say it.
right-leaning and religious, like they consider the Constitution a religious document, or, you know, something along those lines. When you guys talk about constitutional governance, you know, are these, is it the Bill of Rights? Is it the entire Constitution? And how much of what the Reform Party is trying to put forward is based on that document and its relationship to God?
Not really related to God.
And I'm
you
yeah.
you don't have to invoke religion to be moral. I don't think personally. Again, that's a personal point of view. You don't have to invoke religion, you know, for things to be, you know, moral. So when we're talking about the Constitution, it was written as a rule book for government, and that is what we see it as. It is a rule book for government,
And it's a darn
and it's not bad. We just read it the other day for Constitution Day, and so the amendments to the Constitution are by their nature Constitution, you know, and so the Reform Party will seek to uphold those, because if it is an amendment that is passed, then that is the job of the federal government to uphold that.
And it's really about preserving the vision of what the founding fathers put together. And if you can mention our PSS, Sam.
Oh yeah, national. So Article 1, Section 8. You know, powers of Congress. Or really, no, that goes back into the preamble, right?
Yes.
We want to ensure that the government is looking for the prosperity of people, for the stability of the system, and for, you know, the physical security. And so we mentioned that, and that'll be in our second level language of the platform that's coming out. That should be the focus of the federal government. The federal government needs to focus on federal things and let state governments focus on state things, which again is generally associated with a right-leaning viewpoint of, you know, do we say states' rights? We don't like to say states' rights.
It's an anti-federalist position, kind of like everything that they wrote about is what you guys are talking about there for the most part.
But you have to have a strong federal government, though. It
Yeah.
just can't be
Not a bad thing.
in a
Not
country
something
versus what we have. It can't be the only central government. You know, you have to have that devolution of powers to the state. Even in the United Kingdom, a unitary system, they have devolution. Scotland has their own parliament. But the thing is that Scotland's parliament operates under the allowance of the king or of the central government. Our separate states, our separate entities exist by decree of the Constitution. And so what's the point of federalism if you don't use it?
That's fair. I think it's interesting that you're after all the things that sort of the Reform Party has gone through, you're all being very careful not to get the cart ahead of the horse. You know, I really like what you said about the presidential thing. Everybody wants to put somebody up for president, but then we're like living in election cycles as far as our concepts of what a government is supposed to be or can be doing, and that's really problematic. So,
Well, and that's probably another reason that they lose all the time is because, you know, it's an unknown party. They have no money. They put somebody in a presidential election where they're up against somebody that has $45 million for just mail.
Yes.
Oh my God.
That's the infinite loop. Then you go back to, you know, all that effort put into building something else to help you get to that point. And nobody, you know, how are we supposed to, you know, compete with that kind of money?
Unless you're like a billionaire or something. But like, again, for us, for, you know, Rick and I, we're normal, right? Like, I'm not breaking $50,000. I'm not running for president, but I do want to impact my local community in a positive way. And so what we see value in these conversations in these political organizations and y'all, you know, taking the time to talk with us is a voice, a set of principles that we can speak out nationally, but locally, that's where you want to enact your change first. There's an over focus on the national government. It's showy, right? Like you're living election cycle to election cycle. It's made for TV drama, but politics is best whenever it's kind of boring, because politics is boring. Sit down and read the Constitution in one fell swoop. That's boring, but it's important. And so we've got to reignite civic duty. We have to reignite community involvement. We have to reignite the realization that local and state government is where most of your governance comes from on your day-to-day life. And the federal government needs to focus on federal things.
Well, I guess I lied. We only asked one question that was specific to the Reform Party, unless you have another question.
no, the Buchanan one was the one that I just was really curious about, and the one at the beginning where it traversed the Perota. So, and it's been great, guys.
So do you guys have any other questions for us before we wrap this thing up?
I don't know, y'all got another hour. It's a platform. We talk a lot. I'm not gonna lie, we talk a lot.
I like your energy, Sam. You are ready to go.
Listen. I woke up at 4 o'clock this morning, got ready for my school day, did that, came back. I took a nap about 8 o'clock. I woke up at 10 o'clock, shook off the tire, and you know, I'm hitting that second wind.
We're ready to go. We're very passionate about our beliefs in this cause. And every time I go someplace and get into, you know, I don't push the Reform Party in people's faces, but if there happens to be a conversation about politics, so I kind of probe, you know, poke and probe, and everybody's talking about the same things. Everybody's concerned about the things that personally affect them when they go and try to buy groceries, when they try to go and try to fill up their gas tanks to get back and forth to work all week to their next paycheck. We're all looking at the same things. and scratching our heads like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
And everybody wants to nod along to what some third parties talk about. There needs to be some sort of change here, and because we have, it's like the two grown adults have lost the ability to understand what's actually necessary here for this to be a better place for everyone.
But if I had a question for y'all, I guess it would be like, what's y'all's next steps on this? Are y'all pretty well done with interviewing the third parties? Like whenever we hit the election cycle and the primaries, right? Like, are y'all going to do something for the primaries?
I mean, we'll certainly reach out if people want to do it. I mean, like, part of what you're suggesting is that there's an interactive nature to what it is that's going on, and this is only going to be functionally possible if there's a dynamic that starts to flow between different spaces. So,
Yeah.
like, we don't have. Like, this was something we started a podcast 1.5 years ago. We just were yammering back and forth. I've known Brian for all my life, pretty much since I was 13 years old. So, and we've been arguing for that long. So we've been doing it pretty good for a long time. So we figured it was time to
Record it.
yeah. So
Right.
this just sort of happened organically. Like, I don't barely vote for a regular party anyway. So we're trying to think of creative ways of succeeding at, like you said, you got these two giant social spaces that don't know how to make change, don't really have any interest in making change. So
They're taking
we just want to be a part of that process to make it shift. So
And I think that you have been, and small things like that influence the broader culture as people see and catch on. That influences the broader culture, and so kudos to y'all for taking the next step beyond just like, hey, we should do this, and actually doing it, and really being quite prolific with it, for 1.5 years. Good on y'all, man.
thank you.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
And I'll take that as a cue. We will reach out to you in a little while. We'll see how things are developing.
Yeah, that's kind of the plan. We just don't know for sure when we're going to reach out to you, because I really am curious how things have progressed. What happened, with the South Carolina thing, or what happened when you released your platform, or any of those things.
Yeah. I mean, we ain't going anywhere. Reach out when you can.
Okay. Good deal. Well, thanks again, guys. I know it's 12:30 your time, so I appreciate it.
Where can people find information about the Reform Party at?
That is reformparty.org.
Nice and simple.
That is indeed.
So I'm gonna compress this tonight and convert it to an MP3, and then I'll get it posted, and I will email you guys both the link. But just so you know, you can listen to it on Spotify or Amazon or Google or wherever you usually listen to podcasts.
Awesome.
Yeah, gentlemen, that was enjoyable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very
Sam.
much.
Thanks, guys. We'll talk to you in a couple of months.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks. Bye.